Have you always thought about getting into Dungeons and Dragons but didn't know exactly where to start? GameMasters here, and this video is a perfect start. The great news is, you really don't need a major amount of stuff to get started with Dungeons and Dragons. The basics first. Are you going to run the game or just play? If you're going to just play, then what you need is the player's handbook and some dice. That's really it. Are you more wanting to run the game, be the dungeon master? Then you'll need the Dungeon Master's Guide and the Monster Manual and some dice. It also helps to have access to the player's handbook. And of course, a Dungeon Master's screen doesn't hurt, but more on that in a bit. You'll also need imagination. Don't worry, that's really the easiest thing to obtain. Okay, it can be a bit more complex, so let's explore what these books are. The Player's Handbook. This is the book that is a must-have for anyone wanting to play D&D. Simply put, it's got all the information a player will need to create and ultimately run their character. There's also a character sheet at the end of the book that Wizards of the Coast grants you permission to copy and use. This book is where you will reference your race, class, and other statistics about your character, as well as skills that will help you survive against what your dungeon master may throw at you. It also goes into detail about certain terms like dexterity, how agile you are at doing something, or initiative, when it's your turn to do something, or modifier, how much you can adjust a certain die roll for. A player's guide is also helpful for the DM to own, as it provides an easy reference to look up what knowledge the player has access to, and so you can double cross them. Nah, you're not one of those kind of DMs, are you? This is also where you will find a list of spells and equipment for your character to purchase during creation. Now, real quick, I'd love for you to use your initiative and hit that like button. It really helps to get my channel out there for others to watch. I genuinely thank you for that. The Dungeon Master's Guide. The Dungeon Master's Guide is required for any dungeon master to be able to run a game. It is chock full of all the little details you will need to know in order to provide a rich and dynamic game. Oh, and it has tables upon tables, stuff like random wilderness encounters, random cavern encounters, and of course, the nice loot table so that you can grant rewards for when your players beat those encounters. This book, well, it doesn't really matter if a player sneaks a peek at the rules. The rules are rules, but as a DM, you have the freedom to create and craft your own rules as well. The way I've always played, if I'm the DM, if I say you have a rose growing out the top of your head, you have a rose growing off the top of your head. What I say goes. Not that I would ever abuse the power of a DM, I'm just saying that the Dungeon Master's Guide is exactly that. A guidebook that will help you run the game without losing track of exactly what's going on. And the Monster Manual. Monster Manual is exactly what it sounds like, a manual of monsters. This is the book that the DM will need in order to populate their world with all the meanies and big bad evil guys. Well, and good guys too, also called non-player characters or NPCs, that the players will be encountering. Listed inside are all the statistics and abilities that each monster in your game can have access to. Which dragon can spit acid? Which monster can turn a player into stone? How many kobolds would it take to give a 5th level party a run for their money? This book has all that information. Monster Manual is a book that I'm a little more protective of, and I'd prefer my players to not know the nitty-gritty specifics about each monster. I really don't want them to know that a monster I just threw at them could be taken down with a simple bucket of water. And dice. If the 3 books we've just talked about are the brains of D&D, dice are the lifeblood. Different dice hold different functions and vary from character to character in their function. Some hold various uses. A D4, for example, can tell you how many hit points you just healed for, or how much extra elemental damage you just did. A D20 is used for almost every feat check, from climbing a rope to swimming to jumping off a tree branch and landing on the back of a hovering beholder before you shove a dagger into its eye. Stuff like that. My dice are very personal to me, and I never let anyone else use them. I mean like that. Listen, dice have a mind of their own. If you talk to them like plants and are nice to them, they'll be nice to you. If you use greasy pizza fingers on them, well, they'll react in kind. Unless they like pizza grease, then they might perform better. Regardless, it's up to you to find a set of dice that you like and that like you back. Both players and DMs will need a set of dice. Yeah, you can always use multiple sets too. And the Dungeon Masters screen. This is something that many Dungeon Masters make use of. It's a handy screen that lists many useful charts and tables all in one place for fast reference so that you don't have to flip back and forth in your DM's guide. Plus, it acts as a great wall to hide your delicate information so that the prying eyes of your players cannot spoil the ending. I recommend the Wizards of the Coast made DM screen, the official one, if you're just starting out, only because it will be generic enough to provide you with everything you need. However, once you've gotten yourself to a point of learning a fair amount of information from the Dungeon Master's Guide, you really could create your own custom screen. I may very well create a video in the near future detailing my custom-made DM screens and how easy it is for you to create your own to kind of suit your own campaign-specific needs. I've even made ones for different campaigns that I knew I would need to provide quick information based on the needs of that specific campaign. Earlier, I referenced you would also need imagination. This is a pretty important thing to have when going into a game, regardless if you're a player or a DM. My first game as a player was something that seems so familiar, but was changed in such a way I couldn't quite place my finger on it. We, my party and I, encountered upon a village only to find that one of their people had died the night before. The body was found at the base of a tower with a black stain found on their hand and tongue. Some suspected suicide, but as players we knew it was a murder mystery. During the course of our game, we encountered a secret group made up of various high-ranking officials from the town, and of course, more folks were murdered. We eventually solved the whodunit, and about a year later, my DM confessed that the idea for the game came from the book The Name of the Rose by Umberto Eco. This, imagination, you can turn almost anything into a grand D&D campaign. Even a trip to the grocery store can be turned into a grand campaign. My son really wanted some pork ramen. I went to 3 different stores trying to find it across 2 weeks. Seriously, how can my entire city be sold out of pork ramen? I encountered a very nice old woman, a fairly mean old woman that had made a rude comment about my choice of orange juice, and found a dime in the parking lot. This easily can be turned into a merchant is missing a pig and suspects one of 3 farmers took it. Oh, please hurry before he's turned into bacon. The first farmer is super nice and provides the adventurers with everything they may need in terms of information and food. The second farmer isn't so nice and swiftly turns the party away. And the third farmer, well, he's been killed, and on the threshold of his estate is a shiny piece of silver with a spot of blood on it. Anything can be used for sources of inspiration, but imagination is the ultimate key to having fun when getting into playing Dungeons & Dragons. Give the game a try. It's fun, and before you know it, your mind will be consumed with all the possibilities that Dungeons & Dragons opens up. There are also advanced books. As you get the basics down, there are advanced books you can get to help enhance your game. They are purely optional, but can add a great deal of additional depth to your campaign. Dungeons & Dragons has been around since the 1970s, and it's stronger than ever today. I hope this video has helped you in some way in making a decision about playing. Over the upcoming days, I'll be doing an in-depth look at each of the core books that we've talked about in this video. So for new players and experienced players alike, hit that like button. Give me a subscribe so you can be notified when my next video is released. And until next our paths cross, may your rolls all be natural 20s. Dice.